particular space, technology, and human
I'm
development.
recording you. I'm recording you. Sorry to interrupt you again. I'm recording the Zoom itself because I want to capture
Okay.
this. This is very nice. Yeah,
So
please go ahead.
research on tourism and hospitality has evolved over time from services, real estate, to technology and human development. You and I are in the space where technology and human development intertwine. So what does it mean exactly? It means that we are looking at the type of resources that can help a person flourish within his or her own environment and according to his or her own values, needs, and wants in life. Okay? So, what does it mean as a second meaning? What does it mean in terms of our research? In our research, what we discovered during COVID and after and post COVID was that while people are talking about being inclusive and trying to include everybody within the tourism system, which is highly fragmented, we notice that coordination is a huge problem, and together with coordination, governance structure as well, which means it is about what, who decides, and how benefits are distributed in order to, achieve human flourishing. Why is human flourishing important? Human flourishing is important because we know there is a recursive relationship between tourism development and well-being. So tourism development will provide the resources in order to, enhance education, health, the environment, and so on, while the education, health, environment on their turn will advance tourism development. Okay, so that's why it is very important. What does it mean in practice? It means that you can only have a great service and creativity and innovation if you have a healthy person and a healthy community. And that's the circular part of where it is. And you and I, we populate that space between the intersection of technology and human development. So, what are our projects? Okay, we have two projects actually. The first project is Travel Move, and Jade will provide you what it means and how we use that. We integrate technology and use technology as a platform in order to push, upward and forward human flourishing. And he will give you an example about, for example, this disabled people, why it's that important, and we explain that, and also about the veterans. We explain that, and we focus on the American market because there is where we have a complete set of data that is needed in order to make this happen. Our status right now is we're in the final stage of getting the patent for that, and then we'll move very quickly to clinical research in order to look at the usability, the usefulness of our platform. Jade will give you the details, right? And also will integrate, especially because since you are from the agricultural sector, our tourism is a system that heavily relies on agricultural products, and this is, Jade will provide.
Dr. Cruz, could you also talk a little bit about, given the fact that this is Salutum has been designed as a company to help people with disabilities, including various chronic conditions, and agrotourism may provide that environment away from cities and noises and pressures for the chronic disease relief. But in rural areas, they may lack the resources or the big hospitals. And how Salutum, by solving that coordination, collaboration problem, can bring to those areas that have the agricultural base the resources and the service for them to flourish as a higher end tourism economy. Would you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that then may be an investment opportunity in the US
Yeah,
for
no,
outside
I
the
can
US
say
to
that,
build physical infrastructure to support Salutum with your
of,
guidance.
of course, agriculture usually is established in rural areas or present themselves, manifest itself in rural areas. And rural areas are a great place where you can enhance the well-being of disabled people. and there's a lot of research about that. So that's something new that we will add. So what basically we're doing is we understand the system is highly fragmented. There's a need of coordination, and there is a need for governance structure that is highly participant and purposeful. Okay, and that is what we have created. And Chait will provide you, some of the details of how technology intersect with that aspect. Okay, that's one. We created a business model for that called Salutum, and at some point we might invite people to join and to, if they're interested, to be part of it. Right now, it is a company that is owned by the university and the three innovators. So that's the other thing is, of course, once you have that platform, it is not only a question of a one-dimensional space where you have the customer and the suppliers, but it has more value in terms of a destination can identify itself as disabled friendly. And how do we do that? We have established a matrix very specifically that can really measure that in a very simple way. So we are practicing parsimony, where in a very simple way we can determine quickly that destination is disabled friendly, and therefore it is very critical in a highly competitive tourism world where you can use it as part of your branding or rebranding of your destination. So we will not have a dashboard with hundreds of indicators, but a very, very simple one at the end, which is basically how we measure the transaction. That's second. The third part, which is very important to this one, is the educational part, because we need to educate people about how to work with this platform. That's one. And how they can become more inclusive, for example, in the case of the disability people. So therefore, we can teach, students how to use AI in order to help them with recognize very, very quickly patterns. Because one of problems of the critical thinking is the omission of recognizing patterns, so you can follow very, very quickly and jump and tweak very quickly either your services, your amenities, or your products, or how you communicate. And that is something that we have worked on, and we have an idea of how to do it. And basically, we may move from the United States, where we will have a larger space, not only the United States, but also where we can include Latin America and the European Union. So again, that's something that Jay is very versatile in and knowledgeable, so he can explain that and answer all your questions. Unfortunately, I have to, say goodbye right now and for another time because of my previous commitment. Thank you so much.
Of course, that was fantastic. I'll edit it, but I have one or two more questions, if I may ask, to add to this. So your vision about an educational infrastructure in Latin America centered in Aruba, what does this mean as a gateway for students from Latin American countries to interact with researchers from Europe and America, bring in corporates that have real world problems, and your vision about helping people apply the capability approach, and as you spoke about it in your earlier thing, applying the capability to not only enhance their own capabilities as students to solve problems, but the organizations that hire them will be hiring change agents to transform communities. So can you talk a little bit about the capability approach, AI, and tourism, agriculture, and what are the implications for Latin America, Aruba, Europe, beyond the US?
So what we envisage is that if we establish an institute in the island of Aruba, and why Aruba? Because Aruba is a member of the EU through the Dutch Kingdom. So any accreditation from Aruba is automatically also accredited by the European Union, which means that somebody who gets a degree from our institute to be will also be recognized and accredited, as a degree in the European Union. So that is the reason for Aruba, because it provides more opportunities for those students in order to seize those opportunities that globally will be available or are available. In terms of the students, because of AI, we can set up, a virtual education, which is synchronous or asynchronous education, where we'll bring in top educators from around the world that will provide very clear pattern identifiers in order to help students to be very critical and innovative in the problem. It will be very problem focused, where each student will come in with their own problem, and we will really cater to those needs of that particular students, and we will teach the student how to apply the tools, the AI tools, federated learning, and so on, so that the students can use that in order to solve a problem or to create something new. So that's one. The second part, and it will be very affordable in terms of that. And the second part is where in a very small number, we will practice a kind of Aristotelian type of education, where with a small number of students that will come to Aruba, they will spend a year in Aruba where they will interact on a regular basis with the educators, highly high educators, very high in reputation, and where they will learn in talking to them in very small groups about the problems, the tools, when they're applying the tools, the challenges, and so on. And it's not only about applying the tools, because what we have learned in my 24 years in higher education in the United States, students are great in applying tools, but they are not so great in terms of framing the problem in order to make it relevant. And then once they frame the problem and they can apply the tools, what to do with it. So we will cover all these three parts very intensely, okay? And then we will provide the opportunity for them to go to Europe and to get an internship there, so they can learn from big corporations, so on, and hopefully that will create, through that network, new opportunities for the students themselves. And the final objective is, of course, human flourishing, as I mentioned, because education is a very, very important capability in order to, for a person, for an individual to achieve his or her flourishing. But it's also a very important thing in terms of the global perspective of tourism, because this student can go to Europe and work, get experience, and come back to where he or she belongs, and or feel that they belong, and apply these things. And so we will have a continuous renewal of ideas within that community. And so the community will not remain static, but it really will become dynamic in the way, not that they will eschew their values and their traditions, but they will build upon these, okay? And that is, how development works. It is a dynamic process where you build very strongly on your foundation, values, norms, and traditions, and your cultural pride and identity. But of course, you come up with new ideas and you adjust these new ideas on the context. And that is what Sam reminds us in his capability approach about positional objectivity, where, we use the context, we use the individual environment, we use the community environment, we use the global environment in order to put this all together like in a blender and bring something new to life.
That's fantastic, Dr. Cruz. Would you also like to talk about a project you and I worked together, which may be very relevant to bringing people from the globe to Brazil? As you mentioned, cultural norms, pride in local culture, the rich intercultural spiritual exchange platform that we developed. Would you like to talk about that? And would you like to talk about it in Portuguese, addressing this audience? And with your knowledge of Aruba and traditional culture, so if you can.
Unfortunately, I'm not that fluent in Portuguese to say. I can say it in Spanish, which is
Sure.
which I'm more fluent.
Sure. Could you explain it in Spanish to us? The
Yeah,
rice culture and why
I can
Spanish
explain
culture or
rice.
Portuguese,
Yeah,
why these spiritual traditions have meaning? Like if you can contextualize it in Brazil, because you've been a leader in Aruba, you understand the people there. So I'd like to kind of, without going too deep into your experiences outside of academia, but just to open a window on your experiences as a leader and a leader of communities in Spanish that might resonate with our audience from Brazil and help to kind of contextualize it better for them. If you
Sure.
might.
I mean, I can explain that in Spanish. Rice, as the infrastructure where we combine, we create a framework of where technology and indigenous knowledge merge in order to create something new and help.
So if you can explain it in Spanish, that would be great,
Yeah.
because I think some of our audience may appreciate that a lot.
So let's repeat it next week, next weekend.
Okay.
Okay, and then I think then we have it covered.
Fantastic. So I'll stop the recording now. So you wanted some time to think through your Spanish, is that